In an era obsessed with batteries, buzzwords, and billion-dollar promises, Mazda did the unthinkable. They brought back combustion. Not as a throwback, but as a weapon. While Tesla flooded headlines and Silicon Valley called gas engines obsolete, Mazda's engineers went underground, building something no one asked for but everyone needed. Now it's here, and everything is breaking. Was the EV revolution just a marketing illusion? Did Mazda just bypass the future and find the real fix? What does this mean for other auto manufacturers? For Washington, for your job, your wallet, your next car? By the end of this video, you'll know why this quiet rebellion didn't just challenge the auto industry. It detonated the very idea of progress. The engine that should have killed Mazda. Decades before the Skyactive Z, Mazda had already risked its life on a mechanical revolution, and almost died because of it. It was the 1960s. While most companies were refining piston engines, Mazda looked to a strange compact design developed by a German engineer, Felix Wankel, the rotary engine. It had no pistons, no valves, and almost no support in the broader industry, but Mazda saw something in it. A simplicity, a power-to-weight ratio that no traditional engine could match, a way to stand apart. So they went all in. The result? The Mazda Cosmo Sport, the first production car powered by a twin-rotor rotary engine. It was sleek, it was weird, and it worked at first. Over the following decades, Mazda made the rotary engine its identity. The RX-7 became a cult icon. Enthusiasts loved it, engineers admired it, but the real world wasn't so forgiving. The engine suffered from poor fuel efficiency, it was unreliable over time, and emissions were harder to control. The very thing that made it different also made it a target for regulators and a liability for buyers. Most automakers would have walked away. Mazda doubled down. They spent millions in research, refined the design, and fought to keep it alive, even when it was clear the world was moving on. And in doing so, they earned something rare in this industry, respect, because they didn't chase the safe bet, they chased the bet no one else would touch. Eventually Mazda phased out the rotary, not in defeat but in acknowledgement that its time had passed. But the spirit behind that gamble never died. It simply waited. Waited for a moment when the world needed a reminder of what real defiance looked like. And with the Skyactiv Z, that moment finally came. How Mazda outsmarted Tesla without saying a word. Everyone knows the Tesla playbook: make noise, make bold promises, dominate headlines, cultivate a cult of personality. Elon Musk didn't just build cars, he built theater. And for years it worked. Every announcement was treated like gospel. Every delay was seen as innovation and progress. And other automakers tried to keep up. General Motors rebranded itself around electrification. Ford electrified the Mustang. Even legacy giants like Mercedes-Benz committed to phasing out gas entirely. The electric future felt inevitable. But while they were chasing visibility, Mazda chased silence. Instead of billion-dollar Super Bowl ads or flashy live streams, Mazda kept building. No ego, no noise, just raw engineering. They watched as electric vehicle companies overpromised and underdelivered. They studied the charging infrastructure gaps. They noticed how even die-hard fans began asking questions about battery degradation, grid strain, and affordability. Mazda didn't announce a revolution. They waited for the revolution to stumble, then offered something better. The brilliance wasn't in the technology alone, it was in the timing. By the time Skyactiv Z was introduced, electric vehicles were already hitting turbulence, and Mazda didn't need to shout to be heard. All they had to do was show up with a solution no one else had the patience or humility to build. In that moment, they didn't just out-engineer Tesla, they outmaneuvered them. And while Tesla was still trying to fix its broken delivery timelines, Mazda had already fired the first shot in a much bigger war. The EV dream is falling apart. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Electric vehicles were meant to save the planet, reduce costs, and free us from fossil fuel dependency. Instead, they created a new kind of trap. Charging stations are still scarce in large parts of the world. In some U.S. cities there are hundreds of public chargers. In others, none. And even where they exist, outages are common. Wait times are long. In winter, cold weather cuts driving range in half. Then there's the grid. Cities already struggle during heat waves and cold snaps. Now imagine millions of new electric vehicles plugging in during peak hours, blackouts, load shedding, rate hikes. This is not a theoretical problem, it's already happening in parts of Europe and California. And that's just the infrastructure. Battery production is riddled with environmental and human rights issues. Lithium mining is linked to toxic runoff. Cobalt mining is linked to child labor. Nickel mining is linked to land displacement. Clean at the tailpipe doesn't mean clean at the source. We spend weeks analyzing charging data, battery safety reports, and global infrastructure gaps so you don't have to. Now you clearly see why Mazda's alternative isn't just different, it's essential. If that helped you cut through the hype, hit subscribe. We'll keep you ahead of the curve. Electric vehicle battery fires are rare but nearly impossible to extinguish. One EV fire can take tens of thousands of gallons of water to control, sometimes reigniting days later. Insurance companies are already adjusting policies and governments are rethinking safety guidelines. It's not that electric vehicles failed, it's that they were never the one-size-fits-all solution they were sold to be. And as the cracks deepen, Mazda's alternative doesn't look like rebellion anymore. It looks like common sense. The last great combustion engine. Mazda was never supposed to be the company that challenged the entire electric vehicle empire. But behind the walls of a quiet engineering facility in Hiroshima, something radical was happening, something the automotive world had quietly dismissed as impossible. At a time when automakers were racing to abandon the combustion engine, Mazda's engineers were refining it into something unrecognizable. The Skyactiv Z. On paper it sounds like just another hybrid powertrain. In reality, it's a culmination of nearly 100 years of mechanical defiance. The heart of this engine lies in a technique called spark-controlled compression ignition. It sounds like jargon, but here's what it means. Instead of relying entirely on spark plugs like a traditional gasoline engine or pure compression like a diesel, the Skyactiv Z creates a precise mixture of air and fuel that ignites with an ultra-lean burn, controlled by a spark timed with mathematical perfection. It's like lighting a match in a vacuum and controlling exactly how the flame spreads across the room. This hybrid combustion method delivers two things that were thought to be mutually exclusive: efficiency and performance. Most internal combustion engines sacrifice one to get the other. The Skyactiv Z does not. That balance comes from blending diesel-like compression with gasoline responsiveness. It eliminates waste, improves energy density, and dramatically cuts emissions. You get the low-end torque of a diesel engine with the high revving agility of a gasoline engine, all without the complexity or fragility of a turbocharger or battery pack. Where previous Mazda engines like the Skyactiv G focused on traditional spark ignition, and the Skyactiv X experimented with homogeneous charge compression ignition, Skyactiv Z perfects both. It learns from the past, integrates the future, and creates something neither electric nor mechanical purists thought possible. And crucially, it doesn't require a complete overhaul of production lines, charging infrastructure, or user habits. This engine is already designed to meet the most brutal emissions regulations in the world: Euro 7 in Europe, Levy 4 in the United States, and Tier 4 compliance for long-term operation. That means Mazda isn't fighting regulators, it's meeting them head-on, but with a completely different playbook. Instead of going electric to meet the rules, Mazda made combustion cleaner. They didn't bend the knee, they rebuilt the sword. Perhaps most impressive is the Skyactiv Z's adaptability. It is not a one-size-fits-all engine, it is a modular platform. It can support mild hybrid systems, full hybrids, and even plug-in hybrid applications. Mazda is not asking the world to conform to one configuration. They're offering flexibility in a world where rigidity has become the norm. It is the last great combustion engine, not because the engine is dead, but because Mazda has made it live again. And as the rest of the industry spirals into software glitches, battery recalls, and grid dependency, Mazda just offered a machine that runs, drives, and works with the kind of grace that built the automotive world in the first place. Still, not everyone believed in this vision. Why? Everyone said this would fail. When Mazda unveiled its next-generation hybrid combustion engine, it wasn't met with excitement, it was met with doubt. Analysts dismissed the idea, claiming Mazda was clinging to a dying technology. Electric vehicles, they insisted, were the future, and internal combustion engines had no place in it. The launch of Skyactiv X only fueled these doubts. While conceptually groundbreaking, it fell short in practice. Drivers criticized its lack of low-end power, its complexity, and its marginal emissions improvements. Production costs ran higher than expected, reinforcing the notion that Mazda had backed the wrong horse. Meanwhile, the rest of the industry was sprinting toward electrification. Mazda's engineers faced questions about why they weren't following suit. Shareholders grew impatient, comparing Mazda to companies like General Motors and Volkswagen, which had fully embraced the EV wave. The pressure to conform was intense, but Mazda wasn't built to conform. The company had always thrived on taking the path less traveled from the unconventional rotary engine to the iconic Miata. Instead of following trends, Mazda doubled down on its principles. They didn't abandon combustion, they reimagined it. This led to Skyactive Z, a total reinvention of their hybrid strategy. Mazda took the hard lessons of Skyactiv X, its complexity, its cost, its lack of real-world impact, and turned them into strengths. Skyactiv Z emerged as a refined, efficient, and scalable solution. It didn't need flashy presentations or elaborate explanations. It simply worked. Now, the skeptics are seeing the results. While other manufacturers stumbled, Skyactiv Z is proving itself in the one place that matters most, the real world. Mazda succeeded not by ignoring its critics, but by understanding why others failed, and then quietly doing things differently. Mazda watched the industry fail, then did it right. Across the globe, automakers were scrambling to salvage the combustion engine. One by one, they unveiled bold technologies, each claiming to be the miracle solution that would rewrite automotive history, and one by one, they stumbled. Koenigsegg rolled out free-valve technology, a camshaftless design using electro-hydraulic control to independently open and close engine valves. It promised unmatched efficiency and flexibility, but it was far too complex. Maintenance costs and control systems created a fragile ecosystem, only suited for hypercars, not the real world. Toyota doubled down on hydrogen combustion engines, praising zero emissions and fast refueling, but the infrastructure was non-existent. High-pressure hydrogen storage is still a logistical nightmare, and the cost to build a global refueling network is so massive that even oil companies hesitate. Nissan's variable compression turbo engine offered on-the-fly switching between power and economy. The idea was genius, but the execution problematic. The hardware needed to adjust compression ratios, added moving parts and wear points. Drivers reported inconsistent performance, and scaling the tech proved difficult and expensive. Then came Porsche, armed with synthetic e-fuels, a plan to keep gasoline cars alive without emissions. In theory, it worked. In reality, the price per gallon was more than 10 times that of traditional fuel. Until renewables become cheap and abundant, the economics just don't work. Mazda watched it all. They observed the costs, the failures, and the PR spins, and then they chose something radically different: simplicity. Skyactiv Z does not rely on experimental fuels, fragile hardware, or new global infrastructure. It uses math, chemistry, and proven physics refined to the bleeding edge. While others reached for the stars and fell flat, Mazda stayed grounded and quietly launched something that might outlive them all. Yet even the best engineering means nothing if drivers don't want it. What Mazda's engine means for Toyota, Honda, and Nissan. Toyota had long worn the hybrid crown. Thank you for watching. If you found this information insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates. Leave your thoughts or questions in the comments below. We'd love to hear your opinion. Stay tuned for more deep dives into the world of automotive innovation.